a good inspector as well, which we'll talk about later in this episode, so don't miss that. But a good inspector is going to look for a lot of these things. So hello, Building with Breven listeners. Thank you guys for tuning back in this week. We are on episode number 32, and this is a continuation of the series we've been doing. So welcome back. If this is your first time listening, jumping right into the middle of a series, but nonetheless, still very valuable information to listen to. So enjoy it. But this week we are covering a deep dive into our most popular episode, which is episode 22. If you want to go back and listen to that, it was the 7-step process to building your custom home. This is step number 4 in that process, where we're going to cover all about the mechanical rough-ins, or what we call basically the mechanicals phase of the home. This is after we just talked about frame, cornice, and decking. So you've got that shell of your home complete. You've got the bones built out. Basically, the skeleton and the skin are all on the home, with the cap on top of it being that roof decking. Now we're jumping into the internal systems of the house, which, if we're going back to that body analogy, that's going to be your veins and arteries. That's going to be your organs and your internal systems that keep the house running or living and breathing, basically, in the body terms. So anyways, that's an analogy we like to use, but this episode, we're going to jump into that and cover what exactly is included in the mechanical phase and what are you guys looking for as listeners. So welcome back to the podcast. We're always happy to have you guys listening. And this week, I'm flying solo. My brother and my dad are actually both out on vacation, so I hope they're enjoying their time off, but can't sleep on another week of the podcast. So jumping into it, let's get into this episode. This is all about the mechanical rough-in from my builder perspective and informing all of our listeners, you guys, what to look out for at this point of your build and what you're working with your builder on and what you can expect to see. So first and foremost, I always like to take this in sequential order like we typically do, and we're taking this series in that kind of order as well. So we will always start with our plumbing, which they call it the plumbing top out. This is basically where they are coming in and putting all the piping behind the walls and the sewer and all that stuff is getting set up so that your home is going to be able to have running and draining water after the insulation and drywall going. So right away, we're talking about that plumbing top out. Now, what we're looking for here is a lot of builders nowadays are doing PEX piping, which is PEX piping. It's a special kind of plastic, basically, for lack of better terms. And it is a good product. It's really actually preferred in this day and age because it is very good with different temperatures. So it's not going to freeze like copper used to, bust, and you get those pipes that leak every freeze or every winter. Especially here in Texas, we're not prepared, and most homes aren't built for substantial freezing. But lately, the past couple of years, we have been getting some pretty substantial freezing. So that's where those copper pipes are starting to burst. But the PEX can actually swell, expand, and contract, and it's not going to pop or burst. So the water supply, we're seeing a lot of that PEX. Now, there's different PEX systems. We are using what we call a trunk and branch system. So basically, you've got your main water line running into the house. It's a very thick PEX pipe, sometimes an inch, sometimes an inch and a half, that kind of thing, running into the house. That one is high pressure, of course, coming from your water meter. And then that is going to go breaking up into the branches of the system that are basically going to be out to each one of your fixtures. Those will have a little bit less pressure, of course, as they go farther down the run from that water meter and that main trunk line that we've got in that PEX system. So basically just understanding what that looks like, but you're going to see different colored PEX piping most likely in your home. A lot of times this isn't always the case, so don't freak out if you don't see it this way, but they're using red PEX piping for hot water, of course. That's always easy to see. Sometimes they'll use blue PEX piping for cold water. Sometimes you'll see white PEX piping for the main supplies or hose bibs, or even just some of the colds, honestly, they'll use white PEX piping as well. So different colors there, but just make sure that you're aware of that, and your builder is hopefully, or plumber most likely, is using the colors accordingly to help them know that they're not getting certain water lines crossed, and you're going to get cold coming out of your hot tap and hot coming out of your cold, right? So something to be aware of. Now, the other thing at plumbing rough-in is going to be the sewer. That's the other half of this equation. So when you're talking about sewage in a home, they should have had most of the sewage run underneath your foundation. That's going to be the piping, of course, that is most times gravity fed. So as you flush a toilet, the water goes down and gravity takes it all the way out to wherever your sewer is going, whether that's an on-site sewage facility like a septic system or a grinder tank that churns it up and then pumps it somewhere, or whether it's city sewer. If it's all draining downhill, which plumbing should, and definitely sewage should, it should have the proper slope and proper fall to that to get everything going where it needs to. But this is the time where they're putting in the sewage inside the walls. So think about sinks. Definitely sinks are going to have, of course, being higher up, they're going to need piping that goes behind the walls, then takes it down into the foundation. Tubs, any bathtubs that are going to be built in. So if you've got a primary bathtub or a secondary bathtub that is going to have drywall around it or three sides tile or something like that, those kind of tubs are being set right now, and then they're being connected because they're not going to have access to the behind the walls in the near future of your build. So sewage is all getting connected at this point. Going back to the water supplies, though, you're going to put your valves in, or they're going to be putting your valves in for your showers, your tubs, and all that kind of stuff. Just making sure that those are set up properly for the height of your shower head, where you want your shower valves. Now, mostly on custom homes, you're going to be able to pick where you want your shower valves. So say you have a really big primary shower, you don't want to stand underneath your water to turn it on and wait for it to get hot. So you want to move those valves over, is what we do, move them right over to the entrance of that shower so that you can reach in, you can turn it on, and you're not standing underneath that cold water. So just things like that you want to look out for at this point. Toilets as well, those have all been already placed inside your slab, but they're coming back at this point to most likely terminate those or put basically the valve kit or the mounting kit for the toilets. So they'll put that part on. Of course, they're not going to set the toilets yet, but they're going to get those ready. And sometimes you'll even see if they missed the toilet by an inch or two or something like that, very minimal, but it's not quite centered based on the way that the house was framed up. It may not be the plumber's fault, but they can do what we call an offset drain flange. They can put a flange on it that kicks the pipe over a little bit, maybe an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches, and it'll center your toilet. So something you may see at this point, and that helps center the toilet, but also still provides that drain flange. Like we said, tubs, those drains are going to be connected at this point. And the end of this plumbing top out phase, and I'll do this with each one of these mechanical systems, but the end of this plumbing top out phase is achieved whenever they've got all of the supply piping connected, and then they can terminate it all, and they can put a pressure gauge on it and fill up the water or even air pressure of those lines and read a gauge that is holding pressure. They'll put it on pressure test overnight, and then typically an inspector will come and look at it. If it's still holding the viable amount of pressure that it should, and it has not dropped, then you don't have any leaks. So that's exactly how they test that. Most times with our homes, they're going to leave that pressure on throughout the time that we're working through drywall, so that way if accidentally somebody puts a screw or a drywall nail or whatever through one of those PEX pipes and it starts spraying water, or they don't even know, it might just be air at this point if the water's not connected, that pressure gauge is going to drop, and then you'll know, okay, we had pressure, now we don't. There's going to be a hole in the line before you turn your water on and then flood your whole house. So definitely a good thing to be aware of, and one way that we like to do it. And then the sewer, they're going to test with what we call, basically they have a water riser, and then they're going to fill up the entire plumbing system or sewer system. They'll use a test ball, basically, which is just like a ball that's almost a balloon. They can inflate at the end of your sewage pipe at the very end of it, where it goes into the sewer tap, basically, for the city. And they can inflate a ball, block it all up, but fill the whole sewage system with fresh water, let that all flow through the system, and then start to back up. And as it backs up, that riser pipe, as we call it, that's a head test, a plumbing or sewer head test. And we want to see that head test right at the top of that pipe, that it's not leaking, it's not slowly trickling down overnight and you have to refill it. You may get some evaporation, you may get somebody that bumped it and it might come down an inch or two, something like that. But if it's truly dropping and it's gone down significantly overnight or over a set period of time, that's when the inspector will see it and they'll say, something's wrong, check your plumbing, check your sewage, and make sure that everything is watertight so that you don't have any leaks. Now, cross your fingers and pray that it's not something underneath the foundation, but now is the time to catch those leaks, whether it's the supply water or the sewer water. Definitely want to know about it now before you progress with the home, of course. Now, they should have done a head test, of course, or as well at the foundation phase. So hopefully they would have caught anything underneath the slab at that point of the build. So this is just another step. It's another inspection, and it comes at this mechanical rough-in phase. So that pretty much wraps up that plumbing segment of it. Then we jump into the HVAC, which is heat, ventilation, and air conditioning. So that's going to be the HVAC rough-in. And what we're looking at there is at this point, they are bringing in the plenum or the unit that's going to sit for us up in the attic, but sometimes people will put those in HVAC supply closets, things like that. We're typically putting those in the attic here in Texas. Now, those with the HVAC rough-in, like I said, you're going to have your unit or your plenum up in the attic. That's the air handler. It's going to have the fans. It's going to suck air from one side and blow it out the other side. It's also going to have your coils for your heater. Now, this is all an HVAC system that is a supplied or a ducted air system. This is not mini splits. This is not window units, anything like that. There's plenty of different HVAC solutions out there, but this is a central HVAC system that we're referring to and that we do in most of our homes. I would argue most custom homes that are in the mid-range of size, so in that probably 2,000, even less, down to 1,500, 1,200 square feet, maybe even all the way up to 7,500, maybe even 10,000 square feet, would be using most of the time these central HVAC units. Could be one, could be multiple, depending on the size of the home. So you may see multiple units up in your attic or wherever else those are. Supply closets, like I mentioned. A lot of times 2-story homes will get 2 units, one for the downstairs, one for the upstairs, so that you can independently control those. Also just makes a lot of sense with the way the living space is broken up. So not always the case. Sometimes they'll do one half of the house, one unit, another half of the house, another unit. Sometimes you'll even need 3 or 4 units, depending on the size of the home or the way that the HVAC engineers draw it up. So going back to engineers, this is where HVAC engineering is so important, because they calculate the volume of space, the heights of the ceilings, the climate that your home is going to be built in, all that kind of stuff. And they take that all into account. Your insulation values and your energy efficiency of your windows and the shell of your home, all that kind of stuff is taken into account. And there's absolutely a science and an engineering to it. So once you've got those units set, so those plenums or those supplies basically up in the attic or in your closets, then it's all about the ductwork. Where is the ductwork going for the supply air? So it's going to be pumping air into rooms or into bathrooms, living rooms, wherever else. But that supply air is very important, of course, to keep temperature right in those certain locations. And then you'll have return air ducts as well that's going to be sucking air back into the unit, so that you've got that cycle or that cyclical flow of air being pumped out and then sucked back in. And the idea is to create a flow that will make the house very comfortable. Now, some homes I know up in the north or colder climates, they're putting most of those supplies down low. So like on the floor or in the baseboards or down low in the rooms, because you're building the homes more for colder climates. So you're prioritizing the heating aspect of the HVAC units, not as much the AC aspect of the units. So when you're pumping in warm air to a room, you want it to come in down low and then rise up through the room to the top of the room and be sucked back through the return at the top of the room, most likely. When that happens, you're getting equal airflow throughout the room, and it makes it feel much more comfortable. Now, down here in the south, we are putting our supplies and our returns in the ceiling, but that supply is most times of the year, we are supplying cold air to room. So it's going to come out of the top. It's going to settle down as warm air rises, of course, cold air will go down, and it's going to create that cycle once again. The return airs have to be certain distances away from your supplies. So like I said, there's absolutely a science to this. And without getting into the weeds, just want to express that your builder should be following a plan here. And the plan should have been outlined by the HVAC company and their designated designers or HVAC designers, which most times I would recommend are licensed engineers. Now, we've talked about returns, supplies, ducting, plenums, or the central unit in whatever space that is. Now, you're going to have condensation whenever you're running a unit like this. So condensation is basically just water that's accumulating from the units, and then you have to drain that somewhere. So here in Texas, what we're seeing a lot is you'll have a primary and then a secondary drain. You'll even have a drain pan underneath because there's quite a bit of condensation. If either one of those drains fail, you want to make sure that that water is not coming through your ceiling, in our case, since they're sitting up in the attic above your home. So last thing you want to do is flood your attic because your HVAC drains are not properly run. So definitely something to make sure that you're aware of, or your builder is checking at this point of the build. A good inspector as well, which we'll talk about later in this episode, so don't miss that. But a good inspector is going to look for a lot of these things. So be aware of that. And if your builder is going to hire a third-party inspector, great. You have the right to see that report. If they're not, you also have the right to hire your own inspector. And this is a great time to do that right at this end of phase one, basically, of the building, right before drywall goes on. This is the perfect time to catch any issues or any potential issues before that drywall is put up. Now, the last thing is going to be for these HVAC systems is the condenser. So the condenser is going to be most times outside the home. So this is where you'll see that maybe on the roof of some projects or outside on an AC pad on the side of the home or the back of the home or something. Those condensers can be different sizes and they rate them off of tonnage or tons of condenser rating. So the units can be, I think, anywhere from as small as 1.5 or 2 ton units all the way up to the biggest they typically go is about 6 tons. I haven't really seen anything bigger than that because beyond that, you're looking at just split the unit and then do 2 units instead of just one massive unit. Now there's SEER ratings, which is the energy efficiency of the unit. So that's all accounted for at this time based on the insulation of your ductwork, based on the energy efficiency of your plenum, the blower, all the equipment, your condenser. All that stuff is factored in to give you a SEER rating. And a lot of people are familiar with that if they've ever had to redo their HVAC systems or install a new HVAC system. Now they've actually created a new rating system, which is SEER 2. And SEER 2 is a little bit more stringent. And so those SEER 2 ratings are going to be a little bit different than the original SEER ratings that many people may be familiar with. HVAC. What can you as homeowners look for with your builder? You want to make sure that your ducts, those most times they are flex ducts that are insulated, and that allows air to run through the middle, but they can also be run in a flexible configuration. Now that's great because those ducts can be run in tight or awkward spaces, but it's also can be a bad thing if your HVAC company has squished those ducts to get them into a certain area. Any squished ducts are going to require or are going to restrict airflow. And when they restrict airflow, you're not going to get the performance of your unit that you're expecting. You're not going to get that comfort, and the system is going to underperform. Could also have more severe consequences with your system overall and could actually end up damaging the system in a shorter time period. So be aware of your ducts. Make sure that you're kind of visually inspecting those or looking at those as you're walking the home in this stage. Make sure none of those are compressed or restricted. And then the other thing you're going to want to look for is your thermostats. They will run low voltage wiring for your thermostats. Where do you want those to be? You have a little bit of say, but also you want to be aware of where those are placed in order to determine an accurate air temperature in your home. So I wouldn't put them right underneath an HVAC supply because then, of course, the cold or the warm air coming out is going to heat or cool that thermostat and you're going to get an inaccurate reading. So try to put those in strategic locations, but also you can kind of move them a little bit so that they're not either visually appealing or visually unappealing if you don't want it to be. Nowadays, they're making some pretty sleek looking ones, so maybe you do want it to be visible, but that's up to you and your builder and your HVAC contractor. Now, the way to wrap this segment of HVAC up is going to be with an inspection that we call a duct blast test. And that is a duct blast test where you're hooking up, or, well, of course not you, but an inspector, a licensed and registered inspector, is going to be connecting their unit, taping off basically all of your supplies and return ducts with almost like a plastic sheathing. And it goes over each of those grills or those return boots or supply boots, and it seals them up. And so what that's going to do is allow this energy rating company or energy tester to come out, connect their system to just one duct, usually a return duct, so it's a little bit bigger. They put their unit on there. They've got a big old hose or flexible duct of their own that plugs into a fan and then a reading system. And what they're doing is they're either applying pressure to the system or to see how much leakage is coming through those ducts. Were the ducts not sealed properly at the boots? Are the boots not configured properly? Is there something up in the plenum or the unit that is not sealed properly and is leaking air? And that's what you want to avoid. Of course, any airflow that is going to be able to come out of your AC unit or be sucked into your AC unit from a hot attic or elsewhere, that's what you're trying to avoid, of course, at this point. So making sure everything's sealed up properly and is really tight and looking great, now's the time to catch that. Then they'll give you a readout of the results of that test. You want to make sure that you're hitting your required results from your energy rating company. This is where they can determine your Energy Star rating or your IECC year. So if you're doing IECC, which is International Energy Conservation Code, you have to submit or hit certain years, which is different requirements. And this duct blast test is most times pivotal for that. Now, there is a little caveat. We build with spray foam insulation, and there's an argument that with spray foam insulated homes, since the capsule of the home is spray foamed and your HVAC unit sits inside that insulated capsule, they're not too concerned about air leakage. But for me personally, and as a builder, I still do these duct blast tests just to make sure that there's no air leakage. You don't want to be ACing or heating or cooling your attic if there's leakage, for lack of better terms, but just so that you guys understand, if there's a leak or a boot that's disconnected or a hole in a duct in your attic, you're going to get cold or hot air being pumped into your attic, and that's a complete waste of energy. So checking now is very easy. You can go back, you can tape that hole, or you can fix it, or you can put mastic on the boot or whatever it is to fix those issues at this time. So definitely something to talk with your builder on and make sure that they're doing that at this phase. Let's jump into the third part of this mechanical phase, which is going to be the electrical. And this is going to be electrical rough. So sometimes they call it the electrical rough-in, electrical rough, whatever. But basically, this is a very important time for you to work with your builder, a lot of times with the electrical contractor as well. And it's a great time for you to walk it with your builder, talk through the plans and compare what has been built on site. Sometimes they have to move outlets, switches, things like that, based on framing or based on the way that different doors swing or things that weren't caught maybe by the architect, but it just makes more sense at this point to move things a little bit. Most times builders will walk it with the electrical contractor and the buyer, and that's what we do, especially for custom homes. We'll do what we call an electrical walk. You're walking to look for all those things. Are you wanting to maybe break up some switches and have your fans and your lights for your back patio, for instance, fans on one box, which would sit below the light box or something like that, right? If you've got 5 switches all in a box, you can't do that. Most of the biggest boxes I've seen are only a 4 gang, as they call it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 switches. If you've got 5 or 6 switches that are needed for a back patio, for instance, lots of appliances or lights or whatever else outside, how do you break those up? Are you going to want to put 2 3 gang boxes or a 4 and a 2 or whatever makes the most sense? But I hope you get what I'm saying is now is the time to look at that because you can change it fairly easily. Some builders will require change orders to move things, of course, if wiring is changed or if you want to add an outlet, that kind of stuff. If you want to add lighting too, like under cabinet lighting or accent lighting, you may discuss that at this electrical walk as well. And then you're going to also want to look at your breaker panels. now's a good time just to understand where those are going to be. A lot of times you may see, especially with custom, you might have a main breaker panel, which is going to be your high voltage stuff or really high voltage stuff like your 220 or 240 volts out in maybe outside. So that's going to be like your range or cooktop could be if it's electrical, your dryer if it's an electric dryer. You may have a car charger that would be 240 volt, that kind of thing. So any of those big appliances that are going to pull that much electricity, those would be in a main breaker panel. Now you'd also have a switch in the main breaker panel for a sub panel is what we're seeing. And then that sub panel will control light, fixtures, outlets, all that kind of stuff. Those circuits that are more inside the home that are just your typical 120 volts voltage. So anyways, knowing where those are, we usually put our sub panels in the garage. Some people will put those in maybe a closet or somewhere in the house, if that makes more sense. Like garages for us, a lot of times make a lot of sense. They're connected to the house. If your lights go out for some reason and you have to go flip a breaker, you're not walking outside. You don't have to go out at night, or if it's raining or a thunderstorm or whatever else, the garage is a pretty convenient place to put that. Now, to wrap up the electrical, you're going to want to make sure that basically the boxes and all the outlets and light fixtures and all that stuff are positioned where you want them. So is there a box, for instance, for a chandelier over your primary bathtub? Is that what you're looking for? Does it need to be centered, or do you want it moved out or off-centered for some reason? All that kind of stuff is what you're looking for at this point. Outlets, do you want to add an outlet maybe for a coffee maker in your pantry or something like that? Outlets are not typically standard in closets, pantries, things like that. So the code will dictate mostly where those outlets and that kind of thing are going to go, but you can absolutely walk with your builder. And if you want to add something, this is usually the time to do that. So bring it up. Like I said, may initiate a change order, but better to do it now than to try to do it later after drywall is up. And then one other thing to note on electrical rough-in is going to be the low voltage. So sometimes the electricians will do this. We actually have a company that does all of our low voltage stuff. Now, when I say low voltage, let's talk about what that means. Low voltage rough is where they're going to be running wiring for anything that is exactly like it sounds, low voltage. So that could be security cameras or any security devices. That could be speakers, internet, cable, doorbells, smart home equipment. Now there's a lot of like smart ceiling fans and other things that may even require low voltage. Any of your media equipment. So if you have a media room and you want to do surround sound or an HDMI cable or something like that, or a lot of people are doing Cat 6 and all kinds of plugins for smart TVs now. All that kind of stuff happens at this point as well. After the electrical has been installed, after all the other mechanicals are in typically, and they're able to run all their stuff and put boxes where that needs to go. Sometimes they'll just leave wire behind the wall so that you could punch it later, punch a hole in the wall, and then mount like a flush mount speaker or something, for instance. So don't always be concerned if the wire is there, but the box is not there, or vice versa. If there's a box there, but you're not supposed to have one, talk about it with your builder, but something to be aware of and talk through as you're thinking about low voltage. There's a surprising amount of equipment or fixtures nowadays that require low voltage. Like I've even seen some refrigerators that are smart refrigerators, but they require internet. Sometimes those are Wi-Fi, but sometimes they actually have to be hardwired to like a Cat 6 or an Ethernet cable. So something to definitely research, and always good to have your selections picked out before this phase so you know what needs to be run where. And then let's talk about a little bit of a bonus to wrap this episode up. There's going to be a little bonus segment of the rough-in phase that we do. Some builders may not. Some builders may be required to do this, depending on where you live in the country, that kind of stuff. But we do a pest rough-in or pest control right before insulation and right before drywall. What that looks like for us, and I unfortunately don't know what other parts of the country do based on what pests they have, things like that. With basements, that could obviously change a lot of things too. We don't really worry about that here in Texas, of course. But when we're doing our pest control, we're spraying all of our studs with a borate treatment. Borate is just a chemical it's deterrent of wood insects. So basically when you spray that borate on there, a lot of times they'll put dye, or sometimes they'll do clear if they're spraying around windows or other things that they don't want to dye. But the dye helps them know where they've sprayed, helps us know that they have sprayed. All they're doing is applying this borate treatment in a pump sprayer on the mostly bottom 3, 4, 5-ish feet of your wood in your home, so that any subterranean insects, like we call them, or termites or anything like that that would bore through your wood and cause significant issues later down the line, they're deterred by this borate. So when you spray it on, it's supposed to help deter the bugs and pests. It can also give us a termite treated certificate. And sometimes VA loans and other types of loans will look for that, because when you're getting a 30-year mortgage on a home, they're going to want to make sure that if it's a new home, has it been treated properly? Is it going to withstand the test of time? May even help with your homeowner's insurance as well. So something to look into. But we're doing that. We're also doing a system down here. It's through Home Team Pest Defense. That's just one of our pest companies. But what they do is they run this proprietary system that is basically tubes inside your walls, really small tubes. They're hollow, and they run to a box outside on the side of your home. Pretty small box. Sometimes your home will have 1, 2, 3 exterior boxes. It just depends. They're running those tubes through most of your wet areas inside the walls. So in between your studs, and then stapling them in place so that they can be held there. And this is a very innovative solution that they've come up with. So basically, when they come to treat your home after closing or after you move in for pests, the idea is that they can connect to those exterior boxes with their system, their machine, and they pump in a vaporized pest treatment that goes inside your walls so that they don't really technically have to treat the interior of your home. Now, they still can. I think they have the solution for that. But that vapor treatment is very interesting because it, like I said, treats the inside of your walls without them having to come in and spray things around your baseboards, and you've got pets and kids and whatever else. Sometimes now they say it's organic and it's non-toxic, but still, it's nice if they don't have to come in and if it's not right there for a dog or a kid to stick their hand or paw or whatever into. So yeah, that's what we're seeing with pest control. And some people will take this next level and do even some more things like bait traps or some like Raid or some product like that, where it's a powder. They may sprinkle that along the exterior of the home on the sole plate or the bottom plate. So any bugs that do accidentally come in or get through that exterior barrier, they're going to hit that first line of defense, which is that powder, and most times crawl over it and then end up dying from that. So a lot of interesting stuff that is coming in the wake of pest control, low voltage, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. But this is hopefully a quick rundown of what we're doing and opens the listeners' eyes to what to look out for when they are, and not in a cautious way, but just to open their eyes, like I said, to the mechanical phase of the home. Now, there's a ton here, but really just wanted to break down what is included in this mechanical rough-in phase and what do they need to look for before, which we'll cover this in the next episode, but before they move on to insulation and then starting to hang drywall. So of course, once insulation and drywall go up, that covers everything behind the walls. So at the end of this rough-in phase, I already mentioned it, but do not miss, and this is important, but do not miss the chance to inspect if you want to inspect this phase. And also don't miss taking a really good video. Nowadays, I mean, there's 360 cameras. You could even have one of those. Maybe your builder has one of those, or just go through with your phone or a digital camera, whatever that you have, and walk the entire house. Try to get as much as you can, but have that video because it's fantastic to go back later and say, what was behind the walls here? Do we have plumbing here? Can I hang a picture here? Can I put a TV up here? Do I have electrical? That kind of thing. And just looking back through that video can give you a pretty good idea of what's behind those walls after drywall is hung up. So definitely a little tip there at the end that should help as you guys are navigating this process. But as always, we can't thank y'all enough for being listeners and supporting our show. We're happy to do Building with Breven, and it's so much fun to just talk through this stuff as a builder, but to open listeners' eyes and ears to all this stuff. And if you found value in any one of our episodes, we just ask that you kindly leave us a review, a rating on whatever platform you're listening on, and go ahead and give us a follow. It's free to do, and we help it. It really helps us and helps us grow the show and boosts us in the algorithm. So that's all we ask. If you found any value, go ahead and share it with somebody that you think may benefit from this too. If you have a friend, family member that may be building a custom home in the near future, go ahead and send this over to them. Maybe they'll find it interesting. And yeah, we'd love to have more listeners, of course, and help more people. So once again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. That's going to be an exciting one where we jump into phase 2 of the building process. So don't miss that. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.